Hey friends, in this video, I'll show you how I automate Google search terms exclusions with AI using n8n and Slack. And by the end of this video, I'll show you the exact n8n workflows I'm using. I'll explain every single node so that you can recreate them by yourself. And you can find the links to these n8n workflows in the video description, all for free. This video assumes you run some Google search ads and understand what the difference between keywords and search terms are. Keywords are what you tell Google search you want to pay for, whereas search terms are actually what you exactly pay for. Let's use the example of Nike over here. The keyword you tell Google you want is Nike, but the search terms might be Nike shoes, Nike running shoes. They're not exactly the same, but they're closely related. Who is this workflow for? It's specifically for Google Ads agencies, Google search media buyers, or anyone who run a lot of ads on Google search ads. If you're unsure, my name is JJ. I have background when it comes to media buying on Google search ads, and by now I would have probably ran about $5 to $20 million worth of Google search ads in the past 7 years. Okay, let me start off with a demonstration of how this workflow works. Every single week, this workflow fires and then detects basically search terms that are draining your budgets in your particular campaign. Let's assume I'm this brand Nike. In a particular campaign, when I bid for Nike keywords, right, I don't want any non-brand keywords to show up. If a particular campaign is meant to only bid on brand keywords, which is Nike, I don't want keywords like Adidas shoes to come up. I don't want search terms like running shoes to come up because I want the campaign to purely bid on my brand keywords. So when you run this workflow, the next thing you get would be a Slack notification like this: Nike brand campaign, non-brand search terms analysis. Analysis of Nike brand terms over the past 14 days reveals 2 non-brand search terms that generated impression and clicks within designated brand ad groups. Both identified terms resulted in 0 conversions, leading to a total ad wastage of $68. These terms are recommended for immediate addition as negative keywords to prevent future wasted spends and improve campaign efficiency. These are all dummy data, by the way, okay? I'm not running any Nike search ads. I've replaced all these with dummy data. But let's say in a particular Google search account, you have your brand campaigns, you have your non-brand campaigns, and you have your competitor campaigns. In this case, I'm just doing a automated analysis within the brand campaign itself, because in an ideal world, you don't want any non-brand terms firing within your brand campaigns, and you don't want any brand keywords firing within your non-brand campaigns, and you don't want any brand campaigns to fire within your competitor campaigns. So you can see here, the campaign name here is Nike Brand US. We are running ads on Nike keywords in the whole of US. And it seems that there are search terms which are slippers and cheap suppliers in China. So these are keywords I would say that are not really related to Nike, and that's why we actually don't want them in our campaign. This Slack notification also shows you an option to exclude the recommended keywords. So if you click this button, yes, exclude them, this will send an API request directly to your Google Ads account, to the specific campaign, to the specific ad group, to make sure that these search terms are forever excluded within the campaign, so that in the future, you'll not waste any money on these non-brand keywords within your brand keyword. So if you're new to Google Ads, you probably are super confused by now: brand keywords, non-brand keywords, competitor keywords. Just as a very quick recap, brand keywords are for the brand itself, and in this case, it's Nike. Non-brand keywords related to keywords that are relevant to the brand, but not brand specific. So it can be running shoes, it can be skating shoes, it can be bowling shoes, it can be hiking shoes, nothing that mentions a brand. Competitor keywords are then keywords that mentions a particular brand. So who are competitors to Nike? Adidas, Asics, Puma. That's where you need to have a very clear understanding for this automation to work. And I'll repeat again, this automation is only for your brand campaigns. If you don't mind, let me repeat the difference between keywords and search terms, right? For those of you guys who aren't very sure about Google Ads, keywords are what you tell Google you want to pay for, but search terms are actually what you pay for. Think of the ultimate objective of Google. Google's objective is to spend as much advertisers' money as possible, right? So you may tell Google to say that, hey, I want to bid on Nike keywords. In this example that I've given you over here, it is very possible if you bid on a keyword Nike and end up spending a total of $68. And trust me when I say that, in my experience of running millions of dollars worth of Google search ads in the past 7 years, all I can say is don't trust Google too much, okay? They may say certain things that are good to you, but you may trust Google, but always verify where exactly they spend your money. So in my many audits of many accounts, many advertisers waste a lot of money on this. They're spending on, let's say, their brand campaign or just keywords in general, and they end up spending on keywords which are actually not related to their business at all. If I can share another example, let's say if you're running ads for piano school, you may end up paying for keywords like trumpet school. So I know that trumpet school and piano school are like more or less the same. Highly unlikely that keywords like trumpet school would convert for piano school. So this is what this whole automation is meant to do. It's meant to really dig deep into the search terms to make sure that advertisers don't spend or waste too much money before it's too late. And I'll say that pretty much summarizes what I've written over here. Problem, the silent budget killer. Every Google Ads account, there's always a leakage in terms of money being wasted on clicks that will never convert. This is the example that I just told you about the piano school and trumpet school. The cause, irrelevant search terms, typos, and competitive queries, and this can waste up to 10 to 15% of your ad budgets. In very bad cases, I've seen it waste up to 50 to 60% of your ad budget. And trust me when I say that, you don't want to make Google richer. The pain, finding these terms require constant manual tedious work, right? So the old way is to log into Google Ads, navigate to the right campaign, run a search terms report, export it to a spreadsheet, manually sift through hundreds of rows, log back into Google Ads to add your negatives. So this is the manual process, right? So the weakness obviously is time consuming, it's inconsistent, it's always reactive. For this system I've developed, right, the PPC watchdog system, we want to build a proactive automated system that works for me 24 hours, right? So this triggers on a weekly basis and goes directly to the API to see the search terms that are spending money but have zero conversions. It intelligently flags clear ways like misspellings on competitor searches on triggering on your brand ads, and then sends the Slack notification like what I just showed you. And most importantly, this Slack notification is useful. It's not like just a notification to tell you what's wrong. You just need to click on one button and it will execute everything for you, right? Traditionally, you need like a staff to then, hey, please execute this. Your analyst or performance manager will then go through this manual process, which is extremely tedious and inconsistent. It's a very low-hanging automation that any Google search specialist or Google Ads agency can automate to all of their accounts, right? Just to make sure it saves their clients money, right? When it comes to ads, everything is opportunity cost, right? This $68 could have been better spent maybe buying myself a nice dinner to make myself happy rather than paying Google in terms of wasting my ad dollars, because I know that these terms, especially cheap supplies in China, would not be relevant for a brand like Nike. It also saves you time. It reclaims 5 to 10 hours of manual repetitive work, and it frees up time for your team to focus on high impact strategy. And most importantly, I would say this is the most obvious thing, right? It improves performance, because if let's say you reduce ad wastage, it's likely that the money that you save, the money can be reinvested into better performing keywords, and that's what we really want. And the last thing is you gain a peace of mind knowing that your budget is protected around the clock even when you're not looking. And I think the part of which I've not listed here, right? When it comes to automation or Slack, unfortunately, this might require me to make a separate video altogether, because you need to integrate it with a Slack app, and a Slack app would then fire the webhooks accordingly. If I can show you the backend Slack message over here, right, you can see the ad group ID, you can see the campaign ID. Those variables are specifically needed for the API to know exactly which campaign and ad group to negative the search terms at. Once you click this, exclude them, it will then fire this webhook. This webhook will then receive something very messy. I've anonymized this data. Everything you see here is dummy data. You have the unpacker code node, which then splits out the data into neat categories like campaign, campaign ID, ad group ID, and the negative keywords we want to exclude. We have this Slack message TS. Most importantly, is for Slack message here, because this Slack node is meant to reply to the original Slack message you saw to say that, hi X. So this is the person's name on Slack, confirming the following search term and keyword negatives have been implemented. That's where it's important to have all these information to make sure that the API does exactly what it needs to. Alright, that's it for the workflow. Let me go specifically note by note to explain what's going on, because I haven't done that yet. Firstly, this workflow triggers every Monday 10 a.m, which is the start of the week. You need to populate your Google Ads data over here. You need to put the account number of your Google MCC here. You need to put your account number here, and your brand keywords would be what you're running ads for. So in this case, I'm running ads for Nike, right? So I'm putting the keyword Nike here. And of course, I'm giving the LLM a little bit more context, just in case your business is not very popular where ChatGPT or any LLM knows it, right? Give the LLM more information about your brand so that it understands what kind of keywords that you want. The next note here then extracts the campaign data. Most importantly, you only want to extract the data of campaigns that are active. This is where you can have a lot of flexibility in terms of analyzing which specific campaign you want, right? So in this case, I want all campaigns to be analyzed to make sure that it has brand_US. Notice that I have also excluded any campaign which contains non-brand. If you want to analyze your non-brand campaign, you can then adjust the parameters accordingly to make sure that what is outputted in this branch over here is the campaign you want to analyze. The campaign I want to analyze would be Nike_brand_US_search. And these are the associated metrics with the campaign. What I like to do is just to make sure to go to the Google Ads platform and compare the data you see here to make sure the API is pulling everything correctly. The next thing I do is then split everything out. When you scroll down here, you can see the exact search terms and the associated performance here: clicks, conversions, cost micros, all conversions, impressions. These are the metrics that you want to make sure that you give to the LLM to then analyze for you. After that, I have a custom code node here to then transform everything into a table format, so this makes it very easy for the LLM to analyze later on. After this, I then filter for the brand keyword. So you can see here, right, for the search terms, I've actually intentionally put a layer to intentionally filter out search terms that contain the brand keyword. If let's say my brand campaign is bidding on the keyword Nike, I'm not interested in search terms which has Nike because I know Nike is what I want. Whether it's Nike over here or Nike shoes over here, right? Anything that contains Nike is definitely highly relevant to my brand. I definitely want those within my campaign. But what I'm interested is to analyze non-brand search terms within my brand search terms. I've excluded everything that contains Nike. I've also put a filter to make sure that the status of it has not been excluded, because when I click this already, right, it will then change the status of them to being excluded. And I just want to make sure I exclude the things that have already been excluded. I've also excluded the campaigns which are non-brand. I've also excluded all campaigns which have competitor in them, because I only want to analyze a specific set of campaigns over here. What I have actually done for some of my other clients when it comes to this automation is literally duplicate this line by line and then create different conditions for different categories of campaign, right? So this might be a brand campaign over here. This might be a non-brand campaign, or this might be a competitor campaign. The truth is you can repeat this as many times as you want. Do this for as many campaigns as you want, right? So this is where I would say it's a little bit more powerful. After I do that, I then aggregate the data, and you would realize that you can see the metric date over here, right? So this is 4th of November. This is 6th of November over here. The only function of this code node here is to combine the information, and you can see here in this data source, there is no dates over here. I'm aggregating the data in the past 7 or 14 days. So just to be clear, we're at this node over here, but I forgot to mention a little bit on this node over here. This is actually the magic prompt to make sure that you connect to the Google API. You need a developer token for your MCC account. If you don't have a developer token, I probably need to make that as a separate video, or Google how to get your developer token, but this is something you definitely need to have if you want to pull data at the API level. Login customer ID, I believe this is your MCC data over here, and then you can see this code over here. This is where it's your account number. I have 123 here because I replaced it as a dummy data for now. And this query here is extremely important. You can see here, this selects the search term view, search term, status, impression, clicks, cost micros, all conversions, campaign name ID, segment date, right? So if let's say you want to adjust the parameters, right? Because for now, I'm only wanting to filter search terms who got at least one click. If you want to be very paranoid, right, I would actually recommend you to change this to impressions. The reason why I put it as one click, right, because I know that ad wastage on Google is sort of inevitable. It will happen. I also want there to be significant data. The nature of Google search is that I don't pay unless someone clicks on it. So I just don't want to waste too much money. In certain cases, right, if you're a little bit more paranoid, right, before anyone clicks on your ad, right, you can actually just filter it for impressions already. If the impressions is more than one, then you'll naturally get a larger subset of data where you can exclude them before any ad wastage occurs. So this is more for the paranoid Google advertisers out there, right? Take note that this code is not like a hard and fast rule, right? You can adjust it based on what you need. Going back to this node over here, so it aggregates the search terms data into a single list. You can see here, this is then one item. From 2 items, it then becomes 1 item because we need to prepare it in 1 item for the LLM to analyze. All right, let's move on to the search terms checker over here. In full transparency, the prompts are usually used for these LLMs and builds, right? It's all built by AI of sorts. So I'm just fine-tuning it. And as a Google Ads SCM performance marketer, your job is to analyze the provided data and generate a report in a standardized JSON format. So this is the context of which you have provided in the first node of this workflow. The objective is to analyze search terms data from the brand name over here. You can see the preview from Nike's brand campaign over the past 14 days to identify non-brand keywords. The campaign you've been provided is from the brand's brand campaign, which is supposed to only contain brand keywords. You can see this. It categorizes these non-brand terms into 2 groups based on conversion metrics, because in this case, there might be some non-brand keywords that have been generating conversions. You might actually want to be a little bit smarter in how you potentially exclude them, right? So let's say you bid on Nike shoes and then you see a search terms Adidas pop up there, and then Adidas has actually generated you some conversions, some purchases, right? So you might actually maybe want to shift it to another campaign or it's really based on the performance of the campaign. If the performance of the campaign is actually good, then you can continue spending on it. But I think the most important thing is that you need to make sure that you know that your campaign is actually spending on non-brand keywords in a brand campaign, if that makes sense. The output format will need to be exactly as such, and I've used a structured output parser to make sure every time the LLM generates an output, it will strictly follow this format. Why do we want it in a very strict format? Because we are going to transform it into a nice Slack block. And when I say transform it into a nice Slack block, it's to make sure that the format of the Slack message you see is very nicely done. You can see like nice blocks, and you can add functionalities to them. And I would say that's the beauty about the Slack messaging component of it, because it's very flexible. If you simply use like text messages, right, then you can't make it functional of sorts. So what I recommend is to make sure it's very interactive on Slack, right? Because at the end of the day, these kind of automations are meant to sort of replace parts of a job of a media buyer, and you want to make it very interactive of sorts. So that's where it's important to make it nicely done like a Slack block over here. Alright, I would say this workflow is quite straightforward. It then sends a Slack message to a channel of which I specifically choose, and it is the preview that I've just shown you over here. And just to recap, once you click on yes, exclude them, then this would then trigger another workflow, which would then come to this webhook, and then there's an unpacker accordingly, which looks like this. The code node here then builds the Google Ads request that will be easily used in a HTTP request to then communicate with the Google Ads API directly to exclude the search terms to make sure you no longer spend money on search terms that you don't want. These are the settings for the search terms excluder. The most important thing here is the URL, and you can see here is a mutate function, and you need to put your account number over here. You need to put your developer token over here, and you need to put your MCC token over here. For the body, it's very easy. You can just send whatever that the previous code node had prepared for you. The reason why I can't fire this is because I'm using dummy data, but on an actual live account, it should work. After it's done, it would then send a Slack message to this message over here. So in Slack, right, there's this reply in thread. So this reply would then fall under here, and the reply would fall under here. Instead of me replying, it would then be the bot replying to confirm that the exclusions have been done. In terms of future considerations, I do think there's a lot of potential when it comes to this workflow. I want to automate and implement optimizations. You can adjust bits for the best performing campaigns and keywords. You can potentially extract and analyze performance of landing pages, ads. The takeaway I have from building this workflow is that once you interact with the API and understand how to get data from the API, the potential for automations becomes limitless. So there's like so many things you can do, so many things you can extract, and so many things you can actually ask the AI to do, right? Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.